You're listening to the Man in the Cage MMA and Combat Sports Podcast. Here's your host, Jeff Brantley.
What's up, everybody? Episode 90 of the Man in the Cage MMA and Combat Sports Podcast coming your way in just a few minutes here. So much lined up today. I'm brimming with a smile ear to ear, and it's not because I'm wearing my Knicks shirt, and my Knicks did get the win the other night. I told you, Game 2. I knew they're going to take Game 2 at the Garden. Series 1-1 now. The Knicks do play against the Atlanta Hawks again tonight on a Friday. If you're listening on a Saturday, you already know what happened. Maybe you can make fun of me if they lost, or you can congratulate me if they're up 2-1 in the series. They do play in a little bit, but I'm not smiling because the New York Knicks are tied up in this series and they did get a playoff win. I'm smiling because this is such a big boxing weekend ahead. Such a big fight weekend ahead once again. As most MMA fans know, all of you out there are probably getting ready for a slow weekend. You know, if you don't like boxing, you're not going to be tuning in, obviously, but I think you should be. I love boxing. I'm excited for all the fights coming up this weekend. But MMA fans out there, slow weekend. But for boxing, a massive weekend and a lot coming up on today's show to help preview all those fights. We have Devin Haney versus Jorge Linares for Haney's WBC lightweight title Saturday night on DAZN. A couple other title fights on that card as well. Then you move to Showtime's card. You have Nordine Oubaali taking on Nonito Donaire for that bantamweight title. I believe it's also a WBC bantamweight title, Oubaali's. So a lot of great fights coming up this weekend of boxing. I'm going to preview all of those on episode 90 of the podcast today. Don't worry though, MMA fans. I do have some MMA stuff today still lined up. I'm going to talk about the Bellator Rankings that were just released this past week and the Twitter spat, we'll call it. The Twitter war I got into with one of the Bellator media members that votes on those rankings. I'm going to get into that in 1 second. It actually sounds worse than it is, actually. It was actually an all right exchange, but I'm going to get into that exchange in 1 second. All of my issues with the Bellator rankings right now, and my positives, but some of my issues with the Bellator rankings in 1 second. Also, Jon Jones, he's out there. He's hiring new people to be a part of his camp. Maybe you've seen it, maybe you didn't. I'm going to talk about that in a second, whether it's a good idea, bad idea to bring somebody else and who he brought in, if it'll help Jon Jones possibly make his heavyweight debut later this summer or at some point in the UFC here, or if you go back down to light heavyweight. Either way, I'm going to talk about that. And then some other fights were made. Some other fights were made around mixed martial arts, some very good ones, have some thoughts on those. And then I do have a couple, we'll say, just evergreen topics. You know, for those that have been in TV or media, radio like I was for 9 years, we'll call them evergreen topics, just topics that anybody can talk about. I do have a couple of those today. There's one that was trending from this past week on Twitter. Well, both are trending, but one was trending this past week on Twitter, and I have no idea why people are so upset about it. It's about a steakhouse 40, I believe it's Steakhouse 48 or something up in the East Coast. I have no idea why anybody's freaking out about it. And then the Friends reunion. I told myself I wouldn't watch it. I watched it, though, and I have some thoughts on today's show that I'm going to give you along with everything else. So a jam-packed show. We have that. We're going to talk about Joey and Chandler. We're going to talk about everything on episode 90 of the Man in the Cage podcast. But again, really go heavy on all of that boxing coming up this weekend. So many fantastic fights. And to help me preview all of that, I'm going to give my own preview in the second part of the show, but to help me preview that in just a few minutes here, a couple minutes, I'm going to bring my guy Jeremy Herriges from fansided.com. He's the lead boxing contributor over there. Going to bring him onto the program. He's going to give his thoughts on all of those fights. Plus, we'll get into some other things with Floyd Mayweather taking on Logan Paul coming up next week. Deontay Wilder, Tyson Fury, you name it. We're going to get into everything boxing, but really go hard and preview all of those fights coming up this weekend. You can follow me on Twitter at Jeff_Brantley. Same thing on Instagram, guys, at Jeff_Brantley. Go subscribe to the YouTube channel. I think this is I always say this, I'm going to be like 100 episodes into YouTube and it's going to feel like I maybe just started it or I've been doing it forever. I don't know which motion I'm going to have, but this is like the 11th or 12th YouTube video or 11th or 12th episode we've been on YouTube for. But go check it out. We're going to be on every single episode on YouTube now. So go to the Man in the Cage MMA and Combat Sports Podcast YouTube channel. Hit the subscribe button. Now we get the latest notifications whenever a new episode drops. We also do some EA Sports UFC 4 simulations for the main event of those UFC cards. Have some other content here and there. Normally on a Friday, I do a YouTube live or I do some sort of live video. I think I'm going to can that till tomorrow, actually. I'm going to go on, maybe do a live tomorrow before we get into those two fantastic boxing cards coming up tomorrow. But I also do some YouTube lives there. So bottom line, just go subscribe to it, the Man in the Cage MMA and Combat Sports Podcast YouTube channel. We're also online, the website, maninthecagemmma.show, latest episodes, links to all the videos, links to merchandise. I'm I'm going to wear it next time again, just so you can see it. The Man in the Cage MMA and Combat Sports Podcast swag, all the t-shirts, sweatshirts we have. Go check that out if you're interested. Also, there is a support the show button in the top right-hand corner of the screen. You go click that. You can donate either $1 or $10 a month to the show. Helps me keep doing what I love, and I appreciate all my supporters out there. And if that's not your thing, if t-shirts aren't your thing and you'd rather go, I don't know, say win some bets, get some betting tips on combat sports. I also do a sports betting podcast and tips daily. Sometimes lately I've been a little busy. I haven't been doing the audio version, but I'm going to get back to doing the audio version of things. That's called the Man in the Cage Sports Betting Show. I go over all the sports, but I really get into combat sports. Obviously, I host a combat sports podcast. That's what I'm going to be into. So I do a lot of that, but I do some of the other sports. Go check that out. There's an option for $15 a month, all the way up to $25 a month over on patreon.com. There's also a link there on my website if you want to check that out under the betting tips section or betting podcast section, Man in the Cage MMA.show. Again, follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram, and then if you're more into the audio version of the podcast, which some are, if you're driving around, it was even at a networking event. And by the way, shout out to the Woodlands Chamber of Commerce. My wife, she's recently joined them. We went to a networking event the other day for her. Fantastic. So proud of her. She's doing a great job and meeting everybody out there. But some of the people I met, they said, I mostly listen to the audio version. So getting back on my point here, if you want to listen to the Man in the Cage MMA and Combat Sports Podcast, just the audio version weekly, go to whichever podcast site you go to, whether it's Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. There's many more out there, whichever one it is. Hit the follow button there or subscribe button as well, guys. That way you get the latest notifications whenever a new audio version of the episode drops. 2 times a week, sometimes 3 times a week, doesn't matter. But whenever they drop, you'll be one of the first to know that if you go and hit the follow or subscribe button on any of those platforms. All right, everybody, let's get into it today. As I said, a lot coming up in the second half of the show, all those topics I said, but we now head out via Zoom today. Normally I go out via Skype to all my guests, but just take you behind the curtain a little bit, take you back behind the curtain, a little insider knowledge here. I was on Skype trying to hook up with Jeremy right now before I started the recording, and I was having some issues with my camera. So now I'm going to go out via Zoom. Thank you, Jeremy, for being patient with me. We're going to go out via Zoom now. Welcome in my guy, Jeremy Herriges, via Zoom this time. Really excited to welcome onto the show right now, Jeremy Herriges, a.k.a. That Boxing Writer. You can follow him on Twitter at @ABoxingWriter. That's capital A Boxing Writer. And on Instagram at That Boxing Writer. Jeremy is the lead boxing contributor over at fansided.com. Jeremy has also been featured in many other publications, including sportsillustrated.com and Bleacher Report, many more, guys. Go check him out again on Twitter and on Instagram. Additionally, you can go check out Jeremy's YouTube channel, That Boxing Writer. Jeremy, we have so much to talk about today, man. Some big fights coming up this weekend, 4 title fights on tap. So much going around the boxing landscape as well elsewhere. We'll get into that a little bit later on in the interview. But first, man, how you doing today and how you feeling going into a big fight weekend here?
I feel great. I'm a little bit tired. It's been a busy week. Yesterday I was jumping in and out of media calls and interviews, and it's been a fast-paced week. And I feel like a week that's kind of flown under the radar a little bit as far as boxing goes. But as you said, there's some great fights on this weekend. If as long as people are getting the message, I'm excited for it.
Me too. And that's why, and this is honestly, this is a combat sports podcast that I do. I talk MMA and boxing, but there's really no MMA going on at all this weekend. So this is a big opportunity for boxing with some great fights coming up as we're about to get into, to really capture maybe even some of the fans that, again, I love boxing. A lot of other people love boxing, but a few people have maybe went away from the sport over the years. This is some of those weekends that can capture some of that audience for sure back to the sport of boxing. I'm excited about it. As I said, Jeremy, 4 title fights coming up this weekend. We have 3 on the DAZN card. We also have a Showtime card in which we have 1 title fight on that one. We'll get to that one in a second, but we'll start out with that DAZN card and Devin Haney, Jeremy, coming back into action here, undefeated. So much hype and possibility with this kid's future, right? Every single fight now, he's stepping up with different levels of competition. Now he gets an even larger one here on Jorge Linares in what will be his toughest test to date here. And if he's able to solve this, and again, it's Jorge Linares, is he a little long in the tooth? Yes. But he's still had a very good career. So, I'm not making this out to be, a super fight, but still Linares is more than game. This is a big fight for Devin Haney. If Haney's able to win this fight against Jorge Linares, where do you think that puts him in the, quote unquote star in boxing category, and maybe you already think he's firmly there. But, if he beats Linares this weekend, does that put him in that he's a definite star in boxing category? Or, is he on the, cusp of being a full-blown star in boxing? Where do you think he would be if he's able to beat Jorge Linares this weekend?
I think he has to do more than just beat Jorge Linares. I think he has to do it in emphatic fashion if he wants to put his stamp as a star, or at least make the case. I think he was there, and I think a lot of people were let down with his performance against Yuriorkis Gamboa. I think people were expecting a lot more, and unfortunately, with everybody, it's about what have you done for me lately? What was the last optic that we saw on the screen? And that fight with Gamboa was very forgettable. Not that he didn't box well, not that he didn't dominate the action, but it just wasn't a very fan-pleasing fight. So I think he's got to do something special in this one. He's got all the talent. He's got all the tools. He's such a young guy. He's still 22 years old, and there's so much more room to grow, but people want that star now. They're looking for who's the big name now. There's very little patience involved within the sport. And is it a little bit unfair? Sure it is, but he's got all the intangibles, and I just say kind of give him a little time to get into that atmosphere. But I think there's a good chance he could do something special against Jorge Linares. But as you said, Linares has been around the block. He's at this point, I don't know what he is at anymore. I think that's what people are going to be waiting to see. Can he pull out some magic? Can he show that past experience that made him a former champion, or does he get flattened and run one round, which has happened before? So I think that's what we're looking for this weekend.
Yeah, and that's why my next question for you here, piggybacking off of that, actually is, you talked there about the Yuriorkis Gamboa fight and how Haney, he beat him, and that was a step up for him. I would argue a little bit, though, that, Gamboa was coming off of the Gervonta Davis fight. The Davis power is real, and he's going to take some guys' souls, and guys are going to be different after they fight Gervonta Davis. So I'm not trying to rip that win too much, but who knows what Gamboa we're going to get moving forward after a loss like that, getting knocked out. But still, it was still a big win, a step up for Devin Haney. But like you said, it wasn't all that impressive. He beat him, but he wanted a little bit more, and that's what you need to become a star in boxing. And that's why yesterday at the media day, at the press conference, Devin Haney was talking about, and that's why I love this quote, and I tweeted it out on Twitter, that he talked about the world is going to see a dominant performance from me, that the world does not expect, and Jorge Linares might not even expect what kind of performance I'm bringing. Do you like him saying that going into a fight like this? Because as you mentioned there, he could maybe do something super impressive in this fight. He might need to do something super impressive to become a star. Do you like when a young fighter like Haney comes out and says that? Do you think he's getting the message that, hey, I do need to go out there in this performance, and I do need to put a special show on for the fans to become that next, start to butt into that next superstar of a fighter?
Well, I always like it when a fighter shows confidence and when they show that they believe in their skill set. The only thing that gives me a little bit of pause with that is it tells me that he's feeling the pressure, that he knows he didn't live up to the expectations of the last fight. And if you watch that last fight, he really wanted the knockout. He wanted the knockout so bad, and he was loading up on punches, and he would, deliver a shot, but then I almost felt like he kind of let go of his fundamentals a little bit and would just get tied up, like he was looking for that home run shot. And it's like, hey, remember, you can work the body, make him think downstairs, then go upstairs. He was so focused on hitting that home run shot that I think he had a little bit of tunnel vision. And I hope that he learned from that and doesn't do the same thing in this fight, especially against a guy like Linares, that, hey, yes, people have banged him out in one round before, but he's going to be expecting that. He's going to be weary. He knows you're the younger fighter. He's going to try to go the distance with you. And I don't know if Haney really is a special knockout puncher. And I'm not trying to take anything away from him, but 25-0, 15 KOs. He's in that 60 percentile as far as KO ratings. That's a far cry from 90%, if you look over at Ryan Garcia. Yeah. And that's okay, but box. Make that your game. Don't go for the home run.
Yeah, I mean, that's got to be the key for him because he's such a good technical fighter that, he shows off a good jab. He doubles up on his left hand a lot. Doesn't really, like you said, sometimes he will overthrow, but most of the time he's just sniping with that right hand. So he's got to know if he's going to find knockouts in his career, unless he develops into this different fighter later on in his career where he finds an extra level as far as power goes, he's going to have to set up his shots. He's going to have to outbox guys and put them away that way. Sort of like Floyd Mayweather did even at the end of his career, where the only way I'm going to put guys away is if I outbox them. And if not, I'll just go to decision with them. But that's, what Devin Haney is going to kind of have to do in this fight. And we'll get more into Jorge Linares in a second here, and then get your official prediction on the fight. But just one last one specifically on Devin Haney here. We did just talk about how he can go about maybe fighting Linares here. How do you want to see him going to this fight against Jorge Linares? What do you think he should do in this fight in order for him to find success and maybe get that dominant performance that he's talking about and needs probably?
Yeah, I would say don't think about the knockout. I'd say do what you naturally do. Try to not box yourself into a corner when it comes to expectations and pressure. I think that a lot of young fighters get these huge expectations, and they feel the weight of the world on their shoulders. Forget all that. Just think about breaking this guy down. And I think that starts with going to the body. That's always where it starts. Start with the body, mix it up, go for whatever's open, treat it as a learning experience. Here you have a guy that used to be a really, really, really elite boxer. He's not in his prime anymore. He's there to give you some experience. So learn something from it. Don't headhunt. That's the one thing I don't want to see him do. And you said it before. You mentioned Floyd Mayweather. Box like Floyd Mayweather. Yeah. Think about the long game. Think about breaking the guy down over time and take the opportunities as they come. I mean, that was Mayweather's game. And Mayweather did, in his intermediate career at that point, did find some good knockouts, against a Hatton and guys like that. Yes, as he went up in weight, that knockout power kind of dissipated, but that was more of a weight thing, I think, than just Floyd Mayweather. I just tell Haney, don't rush into it. Don't push yourself to try to fit an expectation. Let the fight come to you.
Yeah, don't try to go out of who you are as a fighter. We've seen that so many times throughout combat sports. It doesn't matter if it's MMA or boxing. You see so many fighters all the time go out of who they are, and they end up paying for it most of the time. For Haney, he's lucky that he hadn't paid for it in the Gamboa fight. He was able to win the fight still, but at some point you do lose a fight going that way too, because even this past weekend, you saw Elvis Rodriguez, undefeated prospect up and coming. He seemed like he was believing the hype a little too much, trying to do something that he should have just fought the way he normally fights. He seemed a little like that, like he was fighting out of himself just a little bit, trying to do too many things. So hopefully Haney can do that coming up Saturday night. But on the other end of this fight, again, Jorge Linares, veteran guy, very game, going to be in front of Haney unless he puts him away early, probably, or some point in the fight. He's going to be there maybe 12, deep into this fight here. So very tough fight for Linares. And I'll ask you this. Number one, is this, how big of a fight is this for Jorge Linares? I mean, you can simplify this, and I know he's getting older, but is this Linares' last shot at a legitimate title here? And I'll ask you the same question I just asked about Haney. What do you want to see from Linares in this fight? If he's able to get the upset, how do you see him being able to get that against Devin Haney?
Yeah, that's a great question. Obviously, I think he's going to have to outbox him. I don't think he's going to knock out Haney. I don't think we've ever really seen Haney substantially hurt within a fight. So it's kind of hard to tell how good of a chin that he has at this moment, but he's a good enough defensive boxer that I don't see him getting knocked out by Linares' power. So I think it's just going to be a pure boxing match. And I know Linares knows a lot of tricks in the game. That would be his best bet, is just box. Mm-hmm. At the same time, it's a vitally important fight for Linares at this point. I mean, if he loses this thing, he's basically a gatekeeper at that point. Some would argue maybe he's a gatekeeper right now, but that pretty much is like his last. I shouldn't say his last marquee fight. He could get a guy like Haney that's testing themselves up, and there's always somebody coming up. But if you get that kind of opponent, and if you look bad in this fight, then you're probably going to lose your next 1 or 2 fights against some top prospects. And that's probably it.
Yeah. And then you go from, because I mean, to be honest with you right now, and I think you mentioned this a little bit, but Linares is kind of that gatekeeper right now, if you will, that, a lot of promotions right here, they're going to put young guys in fights with him, even a Devin Haney here, which is still a big fight. But if he does lose, maybe those top fights turn into you're facing a prospect that has, maybe undefeated, but maybe he's 10-0, right? Maybe he's not getting to the level of Devin Haney yet. So this is a massive fight for Jorge Linares on many levels there. And you mentioned there, I mean, even Linares with the way he might have to win this fight, he might have to knock out Devin Haney in this fight. So we'll transition that into my final question about this fight. How do you see it playing out? What is your official prediction between Devin Haney and Jorge Linares?
Man, I want to go with Haney by late stoppage. I want to go that direction. So I'm just going to bite the bullet and say it. Again, when you have a guy with a 60% KO rating, there's that 40% that, hey, Linares could last. I'm hoping that Haney learns something from the last outing, that he is going to do what I kind of said, that he's not going to be headhunting. He's going to try to get into a groove, get into a rhythm. And over time, he's going to break down Linares. The other thing is too, out of the 5 defeats that Linares has, they've all been by knockout. So he doesn't show a particularly great chin if you know how to work it.
That's true. That's true. And I'm actually right there with you. I do think Haney does find a late stoppage at some point, middle to late rounds. I don't think he puts him away early. I think this is going to be one of those fights where he's tagging Linares a little bit. Linares he's there to be hit in front of you. I mean, he stands in front of you. He'll eat some shots to give a shot. I think eventually that'll start to wear on him. And unless he's able to land a massive shot or really counterpunch well in this fight or do something that can break off the momentum of Devin Haney, that it makes it a Jorge Linares fight, I think Devin Haney just beats him up until finally middle to late rounds, either a doctor stoppage or maybe he does get knocked out. He does go to the canvas. Maybe the ref stops it, something like that. I can definitely see that happening in this one, but it should be a very good one. I'm excited for it. Devin Haney taking on Jorge Linares. Let's get to a couple more fights on this card real quick on the DAZN card Saturday night, Jeremy. And we have 2 more title fights, as I said. One we have for Cameron's WBC women's junior welterweight title as Chantel Cameron takes on Melissa Hernandez, excuse me. How do you see this one going? I mean, on paper, they're talking all the talk, but this has got to be Cameron, right? She's got to win this fight. This should be an easy victory for her.
Yeah, this is the type of fight that you would expect to see her win and win easily, if not just absolutely dominate.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're talking 2-minute rounds, it's a knockout is hard to get. I was talking to Heather Hardy about this a few weeks back about would you prefer 3-minute rounds? She's like, sure, I would. You give me more time to work. She's like, I feel too rushed throughout a round that we're rushing through it. You never really have time to get into a rhythm. And I think that 1 minute makes a huge difference. So I'm not sure if the stoppage comes, but yeah, there's no doubt about it that you expect Chantel to win this big. And there's so many big fights on the horizon that people are talking about her for. She's a step away from hitting some of those big fights. So this is really what you would expect to be kind of like, if people don't know about her, then they should know about her now. And I will say for her, she could easily win this fight by knockout because for female boxers, she's at like a nearly 54% KO rating. That's huge.
Yeah.
So I think she's probably one of the better knockout punchers right now in female boxing.
Yeah, and she also shows off, you talked about the power, but she also shows off plenty of output. She puts a lot of combinations together. She puts a lot of punches out there. So when that's coming at you, she could easily stop her opponent. And I'll ask you about the next title fight in a second, but just branching off real quick, Jeremy, why do you think boxing, why haven't they with women's boxing brought in the rules that the men fight under? Why don't you think they've, to me, because it bothers me every time I see a women's boxing bout that I wish they were 3-minute rounds. I wish that this was a 12-round fight instead of a 10-round fight. Is there a reason? You obviously you're not in charge of coming up with this stuff, but do you have an idea why this hasn't been implemented yet by boxing with women's boxing?
Yeah, no, I would just be using my logical reasoning on this one that, when it was everything for women has always been kind of pioneering that, hey, we're trying to get an equal footing within the sport.
Yeah.
Trying to fight against the double standard that probably on its onset, it was like, well, let's start off, let's limit the amount of time to limit the amount of blows. I hope it was about, hey, we don't have a ton of skilled boxers that are females yet. Let's grow into that. But at this point, I mean, women's boxing has been around for long enough that it should be on an equal footing with men's boxing as far as the rules go. You don't see a difference and I talked about to Heather Hardy about the same exact thing. You don't see a difference when it comes to females MMA. So why is it any different for boxing? You're not changing the round length in women's MMA from men's MMA. It makes no sense to give women 60% of the time in the ring than men. It just seems wrong. So I think people need to wake up, and I think they just need to treat it fairly at this point.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And you mentioned Heather Hardy there. I mean, there's other names, Clarissa Shields, Michaela Mayer, in this fight, Chantel Cameron. There's so many women now that are becoming, and we've seen some over the years, of course, Layla Ali back in the day, but, and we've seen there's other names, obviously we could go on and on, but women's boxing right now, you're starting to see really some big stars in women's boxing. And I think that's why it needs to be changed at this point. It should have already been changed a long time ago, but absolutely it should be changed. And you mentioned MMA there. All women's, MMA fights, if it's a title fight, it's 5 rounds, 5 minute, 5 minute rounds for a title fight, 3 5-minute rounds for, just a regular fight, just like the men do. So I hope boxing at some point really corrects that. Because again, I would love to see this be a 12-round fight with 3-minute rounds between these two women coming up Saturday night.
For sure.
For Cameron's WBC women's junior welterweight title. And as I mentioned, there is one more title fight on the DAZN card, Jeremy. Martin J. Ward, he's taking on Azinga Fusela for the vacant IBF junior lightweight title. Thoughts on this one? Ask you the same question. I mean, this one a little bit obviously closer than the last one. So who do you see winning, and why do you see that fighter winning this fight?
I kind of just want to side with Ward a little bit, and I would say by decision. I think he's really starting to come on. He's working into a bit of a rhythm right now. He's piecing together wins. He had a tough go against Tennyson back in 2018, but something just tells me that kind of there's this momentum on his side right now, that there's some mojo happening within his boxing career, that it just seems like he's got something brewing there, that he's learning fight by fight. So I give him the edge there. But I think that it comes down to a decision.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one as well. I do think it comes down to a decision. I do have Martin J. Ward winning the fight. I just look at Fusela in this one and just how he fights at times. I think, again, I just talked about some of the output in the last fight. I do think Martin J. Ward, over the course of a fight, I just think he's going to put more punches together on Fusela. I think it's going to look better to the judges. I think that's how he's going to end up winning this one. But this is a close fight. Both these guys coming in with good records. Both guys even, there was a little bit of a language barrier there yesterday at the press conference, but both guys have a little fire going between them here. As they should, for stakes that are as high as this on the line. But I do have Martin J. Ward as well winning that one. And then just real quick, we don't have to go too deep into this one. We won't break down every fight in this card, but there is one more that's fight on this card that is pretty interesting. Jason Quigley taking on Shane Mosley Jr. Who do you have winning that one? Do you have Quigley the favorite winning, or do you think Mosley can pull the upset?
Man, that's a great question, because a lot of people want to look at a guy like Quigley and say, okay, he's on his way out. He's not showing the same spark that he showed at some points in his career. But at the same time, Shane Mosley Jr. isn't, I don't think he's an electric fighter. I think he's got some skills. But to me, there's something missing there. So I kind of like this matchup for Quigley. I think this is one that can kind of maybe rejuvenate him a little bit. And I shouldn't say that. I mean, the guy's riding a 2-fight win streak. He didn't look great against Johnson. That scares me a little bit. But I still see more of a separation between Johnson and Mosley. And Mosley's there to be hit. He fights very straight up. So I'm going with Quigley. Man, the ending of this one will be interesting. So I'm, I guess I'm going to go with a decision, but I could almost see Quigley stopping Mosley, to be quite honest. I'm going to change it. I'm going to say he stops him late.
I like it. I like that prediction a lot. And because too, that I also see Quigley winning. I might lean more the decision, but I could also see a late stoppage here. And, Mosley, I've never been super impressed with him. And I think that's probably, and you know what, he's getting in the ring. I'm not trying to rip anybody too much here, but I've just never been that impressed with him. Back in, 2012, something like that, I got a chance to cover the USA National Boxing Championships, and Shane Mosley Jr. at the time was trying to make his run at that, and he was eliminated in the first round. And I know that's amateur boxing. Now we're in professional boxing. It's two different things, different fighting styles a lot of the time. I understand that. But at the time, he lost early, and I wasn't super impressed. And now since he's been pro, I mean, he's had his moments, but I just have never been that impressed with him. I just don't see the adjustments. I mean, even his last fight out, I expected a little bit more from him. So even though Quigley, as you said, maybe some people think he's on his way out, I think this is a good fight for Quigley, and this is a good spot for him to possibly beat a guy like Shane Mosley Jr., who still has a lot of hype around him. Again, he's got, the Shane Mosley name. He's going to always have the hype. That's why they keep putting him on all these cards. And again, he has some wins. So I think this lines up pretty good for Quigley going into Saturday night's DAZN card. Looking forward to the whole card, Jeremy. Should be really good. But of course, we have another card coming up Saturday night as well on Showtime Boxing. Nonito Donaire, he takes on Nordine Oubaali for Oubaali's WBC bantamweight title. That's the main event of that Showtime card. And you have the veteran in Donaire, who's been there, done that. He's that veteran. He's been there. He's won some titles. He's been in massive fights. He's getting older now, but he still packs that power. He still packs a lot of things he did early in his career with that speed. Oubaali, the amateur background that he has going into this fight, doing what he's done. Of course, now being the title holder, he's got plenty of credentials himself. Should be a fantastic fight. How do you see this one playing out, Jeremy? Do you see the veteran Donaire here getting back on that horse, getting his belt back, or do you see Oubaali, I don't want to say a changing of the guard, but do you see him get the win over Nonito Donaire here and retain his title?
Yeah, I hate picking against Donaire because he's such a legend in the sport, and I get it. He's definitely aged at this point, but I think in the Inoue fight, he showed something. He showed that he's still an elite fighter, even though he's not the fighter that he once was. He can still hang, if not put some of these guys into serious trouble. I mean, he hurt Inoue in several of those rounds. And did he get hurt? Sure, he did. But we're also talking about a guy in Inoue that I think is incredibly special. Yeah. You're talking about, in my mind, a pound for pound talent. So if a guy's getting rocked and hurt, but still staying on his feet, still staying in the fight, showing that heart, I still think that there's something left for Donaire in this division. So I'm going with Donaire in this fight. I think it'll be an interesting fight. I think Oubaali is a very skilled boxer, especially with his technical game, as you said, with his amateur background. But it's not like he's a spring chicken. The guy's 34 years old. Yeah. So, is he a little fresher? Yeah. Has he been through the wars that Donaire has? No. And that bodes well for him. But I also see the size difference. And I know that Oubaali is going to have the speed. His reflexes are probably a little bit sharper. But I think Donaire goes into this fight feeling like he's going to be a bully. So I'm still thinking that the veteran's going to take this one. You can never hold him out of a knockout, but I think we're going to see what Oubaali's really made out of in this fight.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we talked about Haney and Linares in the main event of the DAZN card, and testing Haney and moving forward, stepping up. Well, this is a big step of Oubaali, and again, he's got the title, so not taking anything away from the guy, but Nonito Donaire, such a legend of the bantamweight division and boxing in general, that Donaire, this is going to be a very tough fight for Oubaali. I'm actually going to go the other way. I do think Oubaali gets the win, but I think it could be very close. And if Donaire, it wouldn't surprise me if he's able to win this fight coming up Saturday night. I think it's going to come down to a few small things. And we could see levels. We always talk about levels to games, no matter the sport, levels to things. Nonito Donaire could show him levels in this fight, that I've been in those wars. I'm coming off of fighting some of the toughest guys in the world. And there's levels to this. Even though I'm aging, I can still beat you. So it should be a very good title fight on that Showtime card, and a good Showtime card in general. Now, before I let you go, Jeremy, and just a few more for you, and then I'll get you out of here. few more for you. Let's get outside of this weekend's fights. Let's just go into some other things around the boxing landscape right now. More notably here coming up, later this summer in July, we have now Tyson Fury taking on Deontay Wilder 3, the trilogy fight. Fury, of course, was going to, they were lining up the fight with Anthony Joshua later this year as well. That fight on pause for right now, even though it could still happen if he beats Wilder. But the arbitrator rules, Wilder gets the trilogy fight here. Was this a mistake by that arbitrator? I mean, maybe that's an easy question. I don't know. But was this a mistake for them to do this? Because although I want to see Fury versus Wilder 3, and I'm going to watch the fight, and I'll still be excited for it, I wanted to see this fight down the line, though. I wanted to see Fury go test himself against Joshua, and I wanted to see Wilder go face an Andy Ruiz or somebody else. Maybe probably win at levels that he's at, and then maybe, face Fury down the road for that trilogy fight, or face Joshua, depending. That's what I wanted to see. So was this a mistake by the arbitrator? Should he have just allowed Fury to go face Joshua, and then they have this fight get made at some point down the line? Because it probably still would have, right? I mean, if Wilder wins, Fury wins, at some point they're going to meet again. So was this a mistake by the arbitrator in your opinion?
No, because I think at this point it's outside of the rules of boxing. We're talking about the law, and we're talking about contracts, and fair's fair. Obviously the arbitrator who's I don't have a law degree. He does.
I don't either. So I don't,
he saw something there that said, hey, with the binding rules of and what's occurred with this contract, you have to enforce this contract, and I'm not letting it go. Do fighting fans want to see an undisputed heavyweight? For sure. I mean, we've been waiting ages for that. I mean, it's been too long. If we really look back and say, okay, Lennox Lewis, let's call him the undisputed champion, because we're talking about an era where 4 belts, that wasn't the golden standard at that point. We're still waiting for that. And yeah, everybody wanted to see that fight, but I think fair's fair. And if an arbitrator who's, I believe he's a judge in his background, if he says that this is the law, this is fair, this is what has to happen, then so be it. You know what? It does add intrigue. It does throw in that wrinkle, that dimension. We didn't think we were going to get it. And you know what? If it all goes down like everyone says at Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas, I think they're going to fill it up. You're going to see, close to 70,000 fans in there. It's still going to be a big deal. The storyline of Wilder's redemption story is catching traction. People are saying he's looking better on tape. So there is a little bit of spice to this fight. So I don't think we're losing too much, other than the fact that, I think we got our hopes up a little bit for something that unfortunately maybe wasn't ever going to really be there, at least for now.
Yeah, exactly. And, that's why, again, I think it was a mistake. Again, I don't have a law degree, like you said. I mean, if it's in the contract, it's in the contract. I would have loved to have seen Fury versus Joshua next to get that undisputed heavyweight champion in boxing. It would have been so awesome. But again, this is still going to be a very good fight. I'm very excited for Fury versus Wilder 3. As you said, they'll fill up the stadium. It'll be massive. Wilder, the redemption story. I think we kind of know what Fury is at this point, obviously. There's so many questions about Deontay Wilder going into this fight, though, and we're starting to see some pictures from ESPN and other publications now showing Wilder getting ready for this fight. It appears that while he's working, it doesn't look like he's doing anything too different from what he's done in the past. I could be off on that. Again, I don't follow him around every day. I'm not in his camp. I don't know. Maybe he is. But just from the naked eye right now, it looks like he's doing some similar things. Do you want to see him do something different going into this fight? And also, do you think he'll develop something different going into this fight, or does he? Or do you think he just gets by with his power in this one and maybe can catch Fury again? Or do you think he should or will develop something going into this fight that will throw Fury a curveball, if you will, going into this matchup?
Well, I'll say this. The approach by Wilder coming into this fight has been very different than it was the first time. Mm-hmm. The first time, I think the confidence was so high. It was like, I can't lose. There was such an open door policy. I mean, Wilder was in an interview like every 10 seconds. And I remember I couldn't make it down to Tuscaloosa. I've been down there at least 4 or 5 times in his training camps. I couldn't make it down there. And I remember I was talking to him on the phone, And he was so pressed for time. He was doing the photo shoot for the article that I was interviewing for while I was interviewing him. So I'm talking to him. He's like taking pictures and posing while we're on the phone. I think they had him so loaded up with press engagements, which is why this time around, it's like nobody can get in to see him or talk to him. So I think there probably was a lack of focus. I think he was pulled in too many directions. Now, does that mean he's going to magically beat Fury in this fight? I'm not saying that. But I think the focus is there this time around, and it wasn't necessarily there the last time. Now, yes, a lot of the same team members, especially if you look at Malik Scott, who's really been the mouthpiece for Wilder coming into this, putting out and leaking, strategically little videos, little pictures. Well, you saw his normal crew in the background minus Mark Breland, but with Malik Scott as the leader behind the pads. So if we're going to say, do we see anything different right now? I would say, oh yeah, because we do see Malik taking the reins as the trainer. And that in itself is going to provide some difference. And he's working on Wilder from the little footage we've seen with different things. He's shuffling his feet. He's not walking. If you look how he moves around the ring, he would just walk to the opponent and deliver his punches. Now he's really got a shuffle going. He's sliding his feet the right way. So he has looked like he's really putting a focus on his footwork. He's working on his left hand to the body. There's those little slight differences. Is it enough? And that's where I don't know. I mean, whenever you're talking about a guy with the type of power that he has, he's always got a chance. Yeah. It just takes one punch to do it. I think he's trying to work on the fundamentals. Is it just too little too late at this point? I mean, trying to learn all that at 35, that would really be a redemption story.
It would be. And he's learning it at 35, and he's going into a fight with maybe the best heavyweight on the planet right now in Tyson Fury. At least Tyson Fury proved that the last time out. You can throw Joshua in there, whatever. But, Fury could be that guy. So that's the thing, is that Wilder, before, that power is such a game changer, and he's always going to have that in the back pocket. It's why I'm not going to necessarily, say he's down and out in this fight and he's definitely going to lose to Fury. The power's always there. We saw that in the first fight. I don't know how Fury woke up from that shot still and was able to get back to his feet. So Wilder will always have that, but he's got to learn some of these things. I just wonder if it's too little too late for him here against a guy like Tyson Fury. And Wilder's, some of his things just so rough. I mean, he's so athletic, he's so powerful, but you mentioned there a little bit with the footwork and everything. He seems like a football player that knew he could punch hard, that developed some boxing skills, but never really turned into a full polished product the way a Joshua is or a Fury or some of these other heavyweights. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder 3 coming up later this summer. And speaking later this summer, Jeremy, last one for you, a couple more before I get you out of here. Logan Paul taking on Floyd Mayweather in just about a week here. In this fight, it's very interesting, right? That you have a YouTuber versus maybe some will call him the greatest fighter of all time, or one of the greatest fighters of his generation for sure. And Floyd Mayweather, Logan Paul has no shot, right, Jeremy? I mean, I don't think some of these odds I'm seeing out there, he should be even higher, I think, Floyd Mayweather. What are your thoughts on this fight? Does Logan Paul have any chance? I mean, outside of Floyd Mayweather tearing his ACL or doing something crazy in this fight that's not expected, Logan Paul's got no shot, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's really, how seriously is Floyd Mayweather taking this? I mean, it's an exhibition.
Yeah.
So trying to treat it like it's a real fight, I think we just have to treat it like it's entertainment,
Yeah.
And not to belittle the fight card, because it's a very good fight card. I've been on the phone this week with both Badu Jack and Jean Pascal, which I think is an amazing fight considering the first one that they had. That's the one that I'm really paying attention to. But yeah, it's the spectacle. It's the entertainment factor. What happens when you have a novice boxer step into the ring with arguably the best ever? I think there's just some people try to take it too seriously. Just have fun with it. But yeah, no, he doesn't really have a shot. Mayweather can end it whenever he wants to end it. Does he treat it like tension, where he just goes in there and just runs over the guy like a steamroller? Yeah, there's a size advantage. There's all that has to be, accounted for. But Floyd could easily get into the body and beat up those ribs if he really wants to. It just really depends on how seriously he's going to take it. And, let it go a few rounds and the guy's going to be tired. And I think that's where he really embarrasses him, because I think we see with Floyd Mayweather, the guy's got an ego and he doesn't like it upset. So he's not going to let this guy get one up on him. He's not going to sacrifice that for anything. So, trying to knock out a bigger guy right away may not happen, but after he gets tired a little bit and you can land 5 or 6 shots to his one, that's when you see the embarrassment occur.
Yeah, I agree. And I think Floyd's going to toy with him a little bit. As you said, the size there is a little different. It is an exhibition. So maybe Floyd doesn't want to go total, just go melt him in the first round, maybe, or the second round. But I think he's going to toy with him a little bit. And then as the fight goes on, you say he's going to probably wear down. We're going to see the skills the whole fight, but especially once both guys starting to get a little tired, you're going to see Floyd Mayweather and why, again, he is one of the best, maybe the best to ever strap on the gloves in boxing. So very curious to see how that one plays out. Very curious to see that one coming up. And last one for you, Jeremy, kind of just, again, piggybacking off that a little bit of, and many people have different, opinions on this. Most people are for it, but there's some people that are against it. Are you for YouTubers like Logan Paul and Jake Paul? Are you for them coming into boxing and making these mega fights? I mean, do you think that's good for the sport of boxing, or do you think it discredits it? I mean, what is your opinion on the YouTube sensation here of YouTubers going and fighting pro fights here now?
I changed opinions on this a while back. At first, I'm like, yeah, from the boxing purist standpoint, it's cheapening the sport. Hey, I've kind of rewired my brain to look at it as entertainment once again, that it's something that's different. It's something that's drawing eyeballs to the sport. And when it's done right, to where it's complementing the boxing, I think it can help the sport. It is bringing eyeballs. My primary profession is as a high school teacher. And when I go to my high school kids and I talk about boxing, one thing I asked them was, hey, can you guys name me one boxer? And they go, I only know Ryan Garcia, but because of Instagram.
Yeah.
That says a whole lot, that if you're trying to reach a younger generation, it's about social media. And, if these guys are willing to go in a ring and get paid to get beat up, then so be it. Or in Jake Paul's case, to go in there and beat up a basketball player or an out of shape MMA fighter, then so be it. If you build like a structure around it where there's some decent matches, then what's the harm in that? I could handle that as entertainment. And if their YouTube followers or their social media followers are going to, chime in and maybe see something that gets them excited, that brings them along for another fight, cool. Which is why I like Triller too. They're doing something different. I don't think that their last outing with Jake Paul was the greatest. I think that there was, it came off sloppy compared to what they did with the Tyson fight. It was more debauchery. I think they lost a little bit of the class that they had in that Tyson fight. But whenever you're kind of learning and you've got somebody doing something different, there's going to be bumps and bruises along the way. So I think they're still learning how to put it all together. But I think it's exciting, to be honest.
I think so too. And I think it draws more eyes to the sport, obviously, that, as you said, younger kids, do they know some of these other professional boxers? Maybe not. That's why even what the, UFC has done in MMA, what they've been able to do with incentivizing people to get out there on social media, and that we're going to reward you for being out there because we want people to know who you are. People aren't going to know who you are. Let's face it, there's just so much content in this world. There's boxing on Saturday night, but there's a million other sports going on. There's a million other shows, Netflix, whatever. So you have to draw people's eyes to that sport. You have to get them there. And I think this is doing that with having some of these YouTubers fight. We'll see how long it lasts, though. We'll see how long we can sustain this, because at some point, Jake Paul will go from fighting Ben Askren to fighting someone like a Floyd Mayweather, and Logan Paul here, obviously already fighting a Floyd Mayweather. If they lose and they're, you start to see, I wonder what the reaction is going to be then. Do they then go take YouTubers back on again? Like, I don't know where they go from there, or do they keep fighting other fighters? We'll see. I don't know what the sustainability of it is, but for right now, bringing a lot of eyes to the sport. Jeremy, certainly there. He is Jeremy Herriges, aka That Boxing Writer. You could follow him on Twitter at @ABoxingWriter. That's capital A Boxing Writer, and on Instagram at That Boxing Writer. Again, Jeremy over at fansided.com. Go check out all of his stuff. Also check out his YouTube channel, That Boxing Writer. Jeremy, it's been fun, man. I've never had you on the podcast before. It was fun having you on today. I'd love to have you on in the future here to talk about some other fights. Have a good rest of your day, man, and take care and enjoy all the fights that's coming up this weekend.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it. I really appreciate it, Jeff.
That was Jeremy Herriges. Thank you once again, Jeremy, for jumping on with me. That was some great stuff. I have some great guests on. Luke Lampy, Jason Hagholm. I got my guy Ozzy out there. I've had some great guests on in the past and moving forward as well. But Jeremy, another one I'm going to have to add to the list there. Jeremy Herriges, that was some great stuff. And check that out. High school teacher, also going out there, being a lead boxing contributor over on fansided.com, his YouTube channel, the great work that he does. I mean, go over to fansided.com. He's got some fantastic pieces. He's interviewing fighters, does some great work. Jeremy Herriges is definitely a great guest, and I'll look to bring him on in the future here to talk about some of the other boxing fights we have coming up later this summer. But some great stuff there now, and I'll get into my official preview, make it a little bit shorter maybe because you heard some of my thoughts already with Jeremy, but I have a few more thoughts for you out there. My full preview of these fights coming up right now. I'll give it to you one by one, just like I did with Jeremy. We'll start out with Devin Haney versus Jorge Linares, 12 rounds for Haney's WBC lightweight title once again. And just like I do with the MMA shows, for those that are new to the podcast, if you are, I go through what each fighter does well, what they don't do well, strengths, weaknesses, all that stuff, then give my prediction. Don't do it for every fight, but the bigger ones I'll do it for, especially this main event here between Devin Haney and Jorge Linares. But what Devin Haney does well, getting into that, and then I'll go through his strengths, weaknesses, and then get to Jorge Linares. But Haney, the first thing that really stands out to you about a Devin Haney fight is his jab. Works his jab really well into every single fight, really uses that to, and I'm going to use this word a lot, and this phrase I should say a lot today with Devin Haney, he uses that to help control a fight, and he really does control a fight so well, does Devin Haney. You can argue, over and over again of, was he dominant against Yuriorkis Gamboa or some of these other fights? You can argue that all day long, but he has controlled fights over and over again using his jab. He also uses some fantastic timing with all of his shots, with his combinations, really knows how to time everything. And that's impressive too about Devin Haney, that he really knows how to time everything. He feels you out a little bit early, but then once he gets his timing down, he really starts being able to connect with everything for the most part again. He really never goes away from the body. Sometimes, like every fighter, like every young fighter will, he'll go away sometimes from the body, but for the most part, he goes to the body early and often. Late in the fight too, he'll go to the body, landing some vicious body shots. I want to see even more of these moving into this fight, especially with Jorge Linares, so he has that going for him. He's got a sniper right hand that he throws. Really only throws it when he wants to. It's kind of, I won't say a secondary weapon for him because it's still a good weapon, but he mostly looks to throw the jab, his left hand, and then double up with the left hand. And then sometimes, of course, he'll let that right hand fly. So again, I don't want to say it's a secondary weapon, but he really uses that to snipe his opponents. He really loves to go to that double up that left hand, though, going to a jab to a left hook and then circling off of it, or just going to a double jab, that type of thing, or maybe a double left hook, something like that. He will do that a lot of the times, but he will throw that overhand right. He'll throw that right hand when he wants to snipe his opponent, when he sets it up with that left hand. Haney also does a very good job with the shoulder rolls, angling off of all of the shots. Again, good footwork as well, and that's what it all goes back to. Good footwork, timing, shoulder rolling, moving your feet. It helps control the ring. It helps you get that ring generalship right, that we use that term so much too in combat sports, of a fighter that's able to own the ring. Devin Haney does all of that most of the time, and that's why he's so good and why he's been undefeated, to use that footwork to really own and control a fight with all of that there. And then last thing for Haney, real quick, before I get to some of the negatives that he does have, last thing, positive, you would say, and I just said it a little bit there, it all kind of connects, all comes back together, but he's got really good ring awareness. He realizes where the ropes are, he realizes where the corner is, he knows where he's at in the ring at all times, so it helps him even more control a fight, that even if you're trying to back him up, it's going to be hard to. You're really going to have to cut off the ring on him if you're going to beat Devin Haney. He's got very, very good ring awareness. Now, just like every fighter, he's got things he needs to improve. His arm angle on some of his punches, they drift a little low sometimes. It leaves his chin out there, leaves his head out there a little bit at times. to be caught. That's one thing he does that he needs to improve upon. Jeremy mentioned it a little bit there. We talked about it a little bit as well in the last interview. He can overswing on some punches that causes him to miss some of these shots. It causes him to really put sloppy technique together with his boxing. So he can overswing at times, especially when he's trying to get that knockout. He needs to cut that out a little bit. And then overall, just maybe two of these that are just general things about anybody who's going to fight like Devin Haney, but his technical style is going to allow, because that's honestly what he fights as, is a technical style. Technical style is going to leave opponents in fights, so you can't be sloppy. You got to continue to do these things. You can't start overthrowing late in fights, because when you fight technically, your opponents are going to be around. You know what I mean? Like if you're a power puncher, if you're Gervonta Davis, you could be losing 6 rounds, 7 rounds, 8 rounds. Go out there and put the guy away, or you could put him away in the first round, right? For someone like Devin Haney, he can't necessarily, I'm not saying all the time, he's going to have some early knockouts in his career. He's already had some. But for the most part, he's going to have opponents that are staying in fights late into fights. So technical style, I don't want to say it's a weakness for him, but you have to fight to that. You have to fight. You have to come in with a game plan that curtails the way you fight, that technical style that knows your opponent's going to be around late into the fight with you. So that's something he has to watch moving forward. And then, competition. That's an obvious one. He hasn't faced guys like Jorge Linares or even the last time out, Yuriorkis Gamboa early in his career, like every fighter. He's making those step-ups now. What kind of step up we'll see here as I get into Jorge Linares when he does well, but definitely a step up for Devin Haney. Now, Linares, what he does well, he likes to walk you down, stalk you a little bit, looks to touch you with some shots, and then go bigger with other punches, which is very smart. And I love fighters that will do this, that he'll touch you just with a jab with the right hand. He's not putting too much on it. Sometimes maybe he's even taking a little heat off of it, and then he'll change it up and go quicker with a faster combination, more power on it with those big power shots. And he also changes the levels of things with that he'll go to the body with that or go to the head, vice versa, then do the other, then go back to the body or the head, whichever one he wasn't going to with the lighter power, and then go with those faster shots, those bigger shots with all of his combinations. So very smart from Linares on that one, looking to just touch you with those. He's got a dynamite left hook. He's a game fighter who's willing to be in the middle of a battle. Has he been knocked down in his career? Yes, and that's another reason why he's not afraid to do that. He's not going to, if Devin Haney comes out here and he's really piecing him up, really tagging him, it's not like Linares is going to go away in this fight. He's up for it. He's going to stay there. He's going to try to land a big shot of his own. That's a positive for him. He's got some thunderous body shots when he goes to him. Big counter right hand, big power right hand in general in all of his fights. And in his last strength here, and more of just a generality again, though, that you can't stand in front of him for too long. And I do think it's a strength because of his body punching, because of how he'll touch you and then go with bigger shots, and how he stalks you and he wants to cut off the ring with his footwork. You can't stand in front of him, or he will eat you up eventually, whether it's decision or if he finds that knockout shot. So Linares, very game, maybe at the end of his career here, but he's done a lot of good work in his boxing career. Now, the weakness is his body is open to be hit. He'll eat 2 to 3 shots just to give 1 or 2 good shots, and then has a lack of movement sometimes, that he does stalk you, does try to walk you down, so he's in front of you. He's not necessarily he'll use some angles, but he's not necessarily the most mobile fighter in the world where he's trying to peel off with some of these combinations. Maybe something moving forward, if he's feeling fresh, healthier, he implements a little bit more. But in his past fights, you watch him, and a little bit of lack of movement where he's going to be in front of you. He's going to be very hittable, including this fight against Devin Haney. And that's why my prediction here, I think Devin Haney wins this fight. I think this is a chance for him to shine bright a little bit. I talked about it with Jeremy there. This is a big moment for him, big step up. Is it some of the other fighters in the division? Is it some of the other fighters in boxing that would present even a more, top prospect? Vasily Lomachenko, some of these guys. Is it one of those guys? No, but it's still Jorge Linares, who still has over 40 wins in his career, close to 30 knockouts in his career. This is a dangerous fight for Devin Haney. I'm excited to see if he can solve this puzzle and go out there and, as I said, have a chance to shine bright. If he goes out there and he puts on a clinic, puts away Jorge Linares, there's no one that can deny Devin Haney's on that cusp or moving into that star boxing category that you have to consider him with the other guys. You already consider him with it. Most fans do, obviously, because of the talent he has. But at some point, you got to start showing it on paper, too. You got to start showing those results. This is one of those first steps, even though it is against an older, aging Jorge Linares. So I think that's why that Haney's going to win the fight. I just went through everything. The fact that Linares does stay in front of you, I think he's going to be very hittable. I think Devin Haney's going to use the jab, double up with the left hand, snipe with the right hand, go to the body more in this fight, move, don't be stationary, not get caught in the corner, not get cut off in the ring. And I think he's going to be able to piece up Linares slowly to where it's either a middle or a late round finish for Devin Haney, gets the knockout eventually over Jorge Linares. And, also mentioned with Jeremy there in the last interview, the comments that Devin Haney made yesterday. And again, go follow me on Twitter at Jeff_Brantley. I tweeted out this comment that, Devin Haney talked about going out there and putting on a dominant performance Saturday night and putting on a performance that everybody is not expecting to see, the world isn't, and that even Jorge Linares himself might not be ready for. And actually, what Jeremy said actually made a lot of sense, and that was a great point of view, and that's why I love bringing the guests on, is getting a different point of view of things, and a different opinion, because we've all got opinions. I'm not right all the time. Nobody's right all the time, right? So I love getting Jeremy's opinion on that Devin Haney comment, saying he thinks it's maybe the moment getting to him a little bit, and I don't disagree with that. It could be that it's getting to him a little bit, but I honestly, though, I did react a little different when I heard that, and I put this out on Twitter again, that I liked him saying that. I think that fully puts the target of expectations on his back even more, and I want to see that with a young fighter. I want to see a guy like Haney, again, maybe, like Jeremy said, maybe he's letting it get to him just a little too much. Maybe he's getting that in his head a little bit, knowing that his last time out against Gamboa wasn't quote-unquote super special. But I think Devin Haney, though, by saying that, I think he's recognizing, I think he's putting it out there that, hey, I do realize I need to go do something special, and I'm going to go do it, and I'm going to put the target of expectations on my back. I've already got a lot of target of expectations on my back. I'm going to put it even more, though, and then watch me. I'm going to go out and do it. But now and this is the kicker. This is where we actually learn what he means by these comments. Does he actually go out and do it, or does he not? Sometimes in fighting and all combat sports or sports in general, somebody will say something, and then the way the game or the fight plays out, it doesn't allow that fighter to do it. So, maybe there's a circumstance where Devin Haney tomorrow night goes out there and he's not super dominant, and it's not because of him, it's not his fault. For whatever reason, maybe Linares' game plan, maybe he goes out there and clinches a lot, really throws Haney off of things. But this now really puts it out there, though, that Devin Haney has to go. Again, there's some scenarios maybe it's not his fault, but most scenarios now, at the end of the day, you're going to conclude that if he does it, obviously he did it, and if he didn't do it, then it's what Jeremy's saying even more so, that, hey, expectations, everything, the limelight, knowing what's coming, what people were saying about him coming off of the Gamboa fight is very true. So this is his chance now. It's, hey, go kid. This is your chance now. Show me. You said it now. I love it. I love that comment, but it's show me now. Go show me what you're talking about with this performance. Dominant performance. That means going out there and knocking out Jorge Linares. If he does it, which I think he will, then I think he will answer a lot of questions, and I think there'll be even more hype about Devin Haney moving forward if he's able to get that mid to late knockout, which I think Devin Haney will be able to do in this fight against Jorge Linares, and I think he'll retain that WBC lightweight title. But it should be very interesting again. Is there scenarios where Linares wins the fight? Absolutely. There's definitely some scenarios where he wins the fight. It's just up to Devin Haney here. I really think it does come down to that. And it happens sometimes in combat sports. It'll happen in other sports as well, where this fight is Devin Haney's to lose. Bottom line, I think it's his to lose for a number of reasons. That's why if he does lose, it's probably on him as well. That it's not saying Linares wouldn't do anything that would throw him off again, or they couldn't do anything very successful in this fight, and that it's not Linares. If Linares wins, obviously he's the one out there fighting. Give him credit, but at the same time, I do think it is Devin Haney's fight to lose, though, coming up tomorrow night for that WBC lightweight title. But I do have Devin Haney getting the win there. All right, move through these a little quicker, and then we'll get to the Nordine Oubaali, Nonito Donaire fight, go through that one just a little bit more. But the rest of this card, Chantel Cameron taking on Melissa Hernandez, 10 rounds for Cameron's WBC women's junior welterweight title. My prediction can't be any simpler than this. This should be Cameron all the way. She either finds a knockout or she puts together a dominant decision. She puts together all of her combinations, uses a ton of different angles to attack you, has a little bit of power in her game. Hernandez, she tries to use a lot of head movement. She tries to use her toughness to wear you down, take rounds. It's not going to work against someone like Cameron. This should be an easy fight for Chantel Cameron, and she should be able to find either that knockout or a dominant decision in this one. The fight that I'm really interested in the main event. We'll see what happens in the Cameron Hernandez fight. What kind of a performance does Cameron put on? But the title fight that will really be interesting coming up tomorrow night is Martin J. Ward taking on Azinga Fusela here. 12 rounds for the vacant IBF junior lightweight title. Fusela coming here against Ward. Both these guys close to betting favorites. close to betting even in Vegas right now, excuse me. The last time I looked, Ward was about a minus 130 favorite. Fusela was about a plus 110 favorite, something like that. Now, those odds could have moved since I last looked and I started recording here. But nonetheless, Vegas has this as a close fight, and I agree with it. I think it's going to be a very good fight. At the end of the day, though, I do see Martin J. Ward getting the win. Fusela, he's very good at playing defense and then counter-punching at times, but Ward just stays in front of you. He puts a lot of punches together. He puts a lot of volume, a lot of output together. He mixes all that in. Again, he's right in front of you. I think that's why at the end of the day, he's going to sway the judges to give him the decision. Fusela, again, do I envision a fight where Fusela counter-punches the whole time, really frustrates Ward, able to counterpunch, win the fight, do some other offensive things? Yes, there's definitely scenarios like that. But I think Martin J. Ward is the side here. I think he gets the decision win. If there is a stoppage, maybe it's late, but I think it's honestly a decision either way. Both these guys, very tough fighters. Both these guys, very high-level fighters, I would say. And last thing I'll say on this before I move to the Shane Mosley-Jason Quigley fight, which you already know my thoughts on that a little bit, is that I wonder a little bit. And we talk about this MMA a lot, and I think it's a little bit less than boxing sometimes, but I still think it takes place of, Fusela from South Africa, right? I wonder what the not to say there's no good South African boxers. There's some really good South African boxers, including Fusela here. But I wonder what the competition level for Fusela has been over the years here, where Martin J. Ward, coming from the UK, coming from Great Britain, there's a ton of talent in Britain, obviously, with boxing. So I wonder if that, I don't want to say the cream rises to the top, because Fuseli's very good. I think it's a close fight. I think he could very well win this fight. But I wonder, too, if the fact that Martin J. Ward in the past here, has been tested maybe a little bit more in the gym, been tested a little bit more growing up, maybe if that helps him here against Fusela. Either way, though, like I said, I think it's going to be a good fight, but I do have Martin J. Ward winning by a decision at the end of the day, unanimous decision there. And then last one on this card, again, Shane Mosley Jr., Jason Quigley. I'm going to go Quigley here. Mosley has struggled over the years. He has not impressed me. I've told the story there a little bit, Jeremy. I'll go a little deeper here. Back in 2012, I believe it was, or 2011, whatever year it was now. I'm losing my mind here. I don't know which year it was, but I covered the USA National Boxing Championship down in Colorado Springs out of Fort Carson military base there. And Shane Mosley Jr. was trying to make a run towards the Olympics there. It's when he was an amateur still. He hadn't turned pro. He's young at the time. Again, it's amateur. It's different. Whatever. But he didn't impress me then. He loses the fight. Okay, and at the time even, Shane Mosley, his dad was actually coaching him. Not that Shane Mosley's not in his corner still and not helping him out, but Shane Mosley was, I believe, maybe his head coach at the time, or had a major influence. Again, not that he doesn't now, but major influence on him. So Shane Mosley, his dad, was there. He loses that unimpressively. I wanted to talk to him, and the PR people down there, Colorado Springs or the USA Boxing, the PR people over there, they do a really good job. But they told me I wanted to go talk to Mosley after he lost. They wouldn't let me talk to him. I get it a little bit. He lost, whatever. He's a younger guy, so I didn't have a problem with it. But at the time, he wasn't very good. At the time, he wasn't making a big standout performance in my head. Really wasn't looking like that next guy. You know what I mean? And again, not to say that every amateur boxer, that struggles then can not become a elite pro level boxer, but he didn't really impress me then. Now he's become pro. He has his moments, but it just doesn't really seem like there's something really eye-popping about him. And that's why I'm going to go Quigley here again. And, Shane Mosley Jr., he's got the athleticism. He's got a lot of things going for him. He's got a lot of genetics going for him, certainly knowing how good his dad was, that if Shane Mosley Jr. can put some things together, watch out. I think he could be a legit guy in that division, but what I've seen from him, I'm going to go Quigley here. I'm going to go Quigley over Shane Mosley Jr., and I'll say decision. My guy Jeremy there, he was going by late stoppage. I like that. That's a greasy prediction. I like that. But I'm going to go with Quigley by decision here over Shane Mosley Jr. And then last fight before I get to some MMA stuff, and then a couple other evergreens to get out of here. Nordine Oubaali taking on Nonito Donaire. 12 rounds for Oubaali's WBC bantamweight title. Oubaali, real quick, what he does well, defensively very good, defensively great, does a great job being unorthodox with some of his defensive style of moving, just rolling his shoulders, feinting certain things, shoulder feints in general, does a great job with all of that. So he's not too unorthodox, but some of the things he does can come off slightly unorthodox and make his style of fighting a very good defensive style. His goal every fight, honestly, for Oubaali is to push keep the pace down a little bit, keep it a slower fight, and then get his offense going. He's pretty good at doing that. He'll stay with all of his combinations the whole fight, uses a lot of different angles also that helps that defense as well. And then I think one of the bigger pluses of Oubaali's game, and why I actually think, and I'm not even getting the prediction here, why I think he has a great shot to beat Nonito Donaire is he's great at crowding you. He's great at using his footwork, using his feints, and then getting on the inside. And even though he's a smaller guy, especially in this matchup against Donaire, which could play big, he's very good at getting on the inside with you and smothering your punches, but not smothering his. And I think that's why he's going to be successful here against Nonito Donaire. And Donaire's a veteran. I mean, that's going to be the first strength I read off here. He's been there. He's done that over and over again. So he could crack the puzzle here. He could crack the code of Nordine Oubaali and that amateur background that he does have. So he's been there. He's done that. Donaire has. He's still got a bunch of power in every punch. Going to have a size advantage here. Also likes to get inside and go to work on you. Throw some big hooks. Throw some uppercuts on the inside. This should be an interesting fight to see where Oubaali is against a guy like Nonito Donaire, who's such a legend in this game and a guy I've been watching, as all of you have, over and over again over these years here, just put together fantastic performances and fight really tough opponents. So this is going to be a big test for Oubaali. And if he passes it, he's going to retain his title, and he's going to have the biggest win of his career underneath his belt. But it's not going to come easy. But at the end of the day, I do think he does. I think he crowns Donaire in this fight. I think he's able to do that, not smother his punches, but smother Donaire's punches and be able to work that way and able to get a decision win that way. But again, Donaire, if he does some things differently, if he cracks the puzzle as he's a very tough fighter, very smart fighter, certainly could see him winning this fight. But either way, I have Oubaali winning the fight, and should be a very good one. I'm excited for that one. That one coming up on Showtime Saturday night as well. So that's all of it. Again, I'll previewed a lot of it with Jeremy there. Go back, check out that interview if you want to go listen to that again. I'm going to go back and listen to it again, or my preview right here on the Man in the Cage MMA and Combat Sports Podcast. Big boxing weekend ahead. Going to do it a YouTube live or an Instagram live tomorrow. Still figuring that out. Maybe both somewhere on one of those platforms. I'll do a live tomorrow at some point talking about all these fights going into them, but should be a fun Saturday night with plenty of boxing. And of course, I talked about it at the beginning here as we transition a little bit into some mixed martial arts. A reason why it's going to be a fun boxing. Every Saturday night when there's boxing is a fun boxing Saturday night, but especially fun because there's really no MMA this week. I know there's a few cards out there, including tonight, Friday night, some other ones going on tomorrow, but nothing major, right? I mean, we don't have a UFC card. We don't have a Bellator card. Some of even the other ones, LFA, you can go down the list. I mean, not saying that some of these fighters on some of these MMA cards, I'll check some of them out. I will watch some of them. Won't become anything or be in the UFC or Bellator in the upcoming years here or other promotions, one championship, of course, maybe the PFL. But overall, just no massive MMA fights this weekend. So it should be a great boxing weekend. But we do have a lot going on in the MMA realm. As I said, there is a few fights, few cards coming up this weekend, including tonight, but a lot going on around MMA as there always is. The news machine, the MMA machine that is, never stops charting. That's what I'm going to go into right now, go down the list here. And we'll start out with what I talked about at the beginning of the show. One of the first MMA topics I wanted to get into was the new Bellator rankings. Did everybody see these? This came out on, I believe, Monday or Tuesday. The new Bellator rankings came out. So Bellator, and most people know this, but I'll just recap it a little bit. Bellator recently decided to move to a ranking system. Now, my guy Jason Hagholm out there, who I have on the show a lot, we disagree a little bit on this. That's fine. Again, I really love Jason's opinion. Had some great points on this, but I love the fighter rankings from Bellator. I won't say I love them. I like the ranking system. I like the idea of it. I like the concept of it, that it does allow, I do think it does. Some people agree with this, disagree with this again. I do think it allows newer fans to know a little bit more about what they're watching. I don't know if the fans necessarily care if, hey, a number 7's fighting a number 5, or a number 4. I don't know if the fans necessarily care about that, but I think if you're just now getting into Bellator and mixed martial arts, you don't know a lot of these names. These guys aren't household names. These guys aren't Conor McGregor. These guys aren't Ronda Rousey. They're not some of these, they're not Israel Adesanya. They're not Jon Jones. It's hard to know sometimes. And that's speaking from somebody who's, I've been involved in combat sports for a long time, watching boxing, watching mixed martial arts. But at some point, everybody is a new fan. And it does get a little hard to know who's who outside of records maybe, unless there's a ranking system. So I do like it. I like the fact that Bellator does have that. I think it is important. Here's the big but, though. The rankings right now are a little bit of a jumbled, I won't say a jumbled mess. I think it's being a little too harsh because I did say at the beginning, I do like some of them. And some of them do make sense. And some of these rankings are, I'm not going to say easy, because I don't think the rankings are easy in general. But some of them speak for himself. For instance, Austin Vanderford. This past Bellator card, Bellator 259. He wins, right? He's at number 3. And then they move him up to number 2. All right, yeah, I mean, he's not going to jump John Salter. He's not going to be the champion, obviously, Gegard Mousasi, who's up there. So, that made a lot of, that's an easy one. He's moving up from number 3 to number 2. He's got the win. He's next in line for a championship, probably. Makes a lot of sense. So those are a little bit easier. Some of them are a little bit harder. I don't hate all of them. I think some of the rankings make sense, but when these rankings came out the other day, some of them are just so head-scratching to me. For instance, maybe one of the worst ones, Hannah Guy, who just beat Valerie Loreda. She's at number 9 on the rankings. She should be ranked, but she's behind Valerie Loreda still. I have no idea why I have no idea why they have Hannah Guy behind Valerie Loreda in the rankings. Valerie Loreda is at number 8. Hannah Guy is at number 9. That makes absolutely zero sense. Absolutely no sense at all. They have the same record, and Hannah Guy just beat her. Are we going college football here? Are we going off of strength of schedule? Are we going off strength of competition? I don't understand that. And if that is the case, it's not like Valerie Loreda has been facing killers. So and that makes no sense. And I'm not saying Loreda should drop out of the rankings, but you couldn't have flip-flopped them? You couldn't have had Hannah Guy at number 8 and Valerie Loreda at number 9 or number 10? Come on. That makes no sense to me. Terrible. Awful. And then you go down the list here. And this one, I'll bring up the Twitter spat I had the other day here with one of the Bellator media members that votes on these rankings. But one of the ones I had an issue with was Darrion Caldwell, who lost the other day. All right, so he moves back down to bantamweight. He moved up to featherweight, moves back down to bantamweight. First fight in the bantamweight division since 2018. Hasn't won a fight in the bantamweight division since 2018. And I know what he's done in the past. I know he's been a champion in Bellator. I know his resume. But still, he hasn't won a bantamweight fight since 2018. And he's now 3-4 in his last 7 fights there. And that's including moving up to featherweight and then back down again. And he's 0-1 now, obviously, as he lost to Leandro Higo the other day. So he's 0-1 in the bantamweight division since moving back down. He's 3-4 in his last 7 fights. He hasn't won a fight in the bantamweight division since 2018. But they put him in the rankings at number 10. And we go to the Twitter spat here. Amy Kaplan out there, who is a very good journalist, okay? And I'm not speaking anything bad about Amy Kaplan. It's not her fault. I'm actually really, really, really glad that she tweeted at me and we had a discussion about this because this goes throughout any sport. The pro baseball, Hall of Fame, the voters there, a lot of these voters on the rankings, a lot of media members in general, they won't even come to the table with you. They won't even have a discussion about any of this and say, this is why I voted on this is why I didn't. A lot of media members will stiff arm you and they will just stay silent on things. So I appreciate Amy tweeting with me, letting her thoughts be known on everything. So I'm not ripping Amy Kaplan, but she starts tweeting at me why Darrion Caldwell was in the top 10 now, saying, it's his resume, it's what he's done at Bellator, all that stuff. And you can go back and check that out again at Jeff_Brantley. It's in my tweets and replies. And it was a good exchange. I really like discussing it. Again, I think Amy does a lot of great work, but I extremely disagree with what she was saying, though. That Darrion Caldwell should not be in the top 10 of the Bellator rankings right now. And I understand that, yes, if he had been in the division before, he would have been ranked already, and that was the voters putting him into the rankings because he would have been ranked prior to that fight. But the bottom line is though, where would you have had him? Does that mean you had him if he came in at number 10, did you have him at number 5 already? Did you have him at number 4 already? Why? He hasn't necessarily set the world on fire in another weight class. He had some troubles here and there before he moved up to begin with in the bantamweight division, here and there. So, I just don't understand it. I don't think a guy who lost, who's 3-4 in his last 7, who hasn't won a bantamweight fight since 2018 should be rewarded for his past resume. And if that's what you're going off of, and here's my next point, if that is what you're going off of, though, then why isn't Brett Johns ranked? Why isn't Danny Sabatello ranked? Brett Johns is 17-3 in his mixed martial arts career. He has more wins than Darrion Caldwell, and he's coming from the UFC in which he lost to Aljamain Sterling and Pedro Munoz. That's it. I mean, before the Sabatello loss here. I know he hasn't won a Bellator fight, but the same thing can be said here. I mean, that Brett Johns has as many bantamweight Bellator wins in the last 3 years as Darrion Caldwell does. So I don't understand that. But if you're going to reward off of resume, then Brett Johns should be in it. And if you're going to say, all right, well, he lost his fight, which I'm not saying, hey, put Brett Johns in the top 10. I'm just saying if that's the logic, then that's what you got to do. If not, though, okay, and that's if I had it up to me, I would have neither of those guys in there, Caldwell or Brett Johns, and I'd put Danny Sabatello in there. Sabatello's got, again, one more win that Darrion Caldwell has in the Bellator bantamweight division in the last 3 years because he's 1-0. He just won, and he beat a 17-2 guy who was supposed to be one of the promotions, new big signing. So I had an issue with it. Amy tweeted back and forth with me. Sometimes it got a little heated, but not too bad. And again, appreciate Amy talking with me about that. But I disagree, though. I think some of the logic behind it needs to change a little bit. Amy also gave a little insight that, and not necessarily breaking news, that she didn't really know how the other voters, what their criteria is. And to me, again, that's Bellator themselves, and it's not the media members' fault. They're just doing what they got to do. And that's why this is a little bit of a catch-22. It's not the media members' fault. Bellator needs to tell them, but at the same time, it's not Bellator's fault that the media members are voting badly sometimes. So it's a little bit of a catch-22. But Bellator, they need to lay out some more guidelines here, I think, and just let every single voter know this is how you need to be judging this. This is because if that is the criteria, then fine. But just let it be known, because if you have 14, 15 people, whatever it is, voting on it differently, you're going to get some jumbled rankings, and that's what this is. Not all bad, but some of it, as I said, not good right now. And it's not easy. It's very tough. I know I'd be sweating putting these together every week, and I would make some mistakes for sure. But that's another reason why I think all around they just need a little bit better of a system. But overall, Bellator rankings that came out, just some points I disagreed on, and we'll see if that continues moving forward on any of these other Bellator cards. All right, let's get off of that one. Let's hurry up down the list here so I can get out of here, and this episode isn't too long. Jon Jones, he hires Richard Schafer as I don't want to say a manager, but he brings Richard Schafer from the ex-Golden Boy Promotions, we'll say boss or ex-Golden Boy Promotions team or high ranking member Richard Schafer. He brings him into his camp now. So Jon Jones going to be looking for, we'll be working with Richard Schafer in the next couple of years here, a year you would think pretty closely. And this move to me, and I tweeted it out the other day, you might already know what I said about this, but some further thoughts on it. I do think this is a great move for Jon Jones, bringing Richard Schafer into the fold here. Richard Schafer is a guy who did a lot of Golden Boy promotions. He helped build a lot of fights. He helped matchmake a lot of fights. He helped promote a lot of fights. And he also left Golden Boy Promotions with a little bit of a scorched earth mentality where he went after Oscar De La Hoya a little bit. He went after some of the other Golden Boy reps. Richard Schafer left at a good time for himself where he was doing a lot of good work, and then he went out the door and he basically burned a lot of people. And why that's important to me is because, of course, the UFC president Dana White's hatred or rivalry, whatever you want to call it, towards Oscar De La Hoya. And I think that's why this is such a good move for Jon Jones, that he has an extra person in his corner now, somebody who has had the position of a Dana White before, if you will, someone that's had those higher positions, been able to promote fights, make fights. He now has that ear in his corner, right? He now has that talking head in his corner that he can help him get some of these details down, that if he is really trying to make the Ngannou fight, if he's really trying to make a Miocic fight or an Adesanya fight or whatever these matchups he wants to make are, and they're getting snagged on some details, I think Richard Schafer is going to help that. And getting to the Oscar De La Hoya point, it's going to help the situation that Schafer is a guy Dana White respects, and Schafer is a guy who can go into a meeting with Dana White and make fun of De La Hoya with Dana White. It should be a good relationship there. It shouldn't be any contentious things, I don't think. And I think it's only going to help Jon Jones be able to maybe make his UFC debut, dare I say, early next year, something like that. I mean, we don't know where he's going to, or when, if he's going to make his debut at heavyweight in the UFC. But I think it will happen sometime, and I think Richard Schafer is going to help it. Now, a wild card I will say coming out of this is, what if Jon Jones were to ask for his release from his contract? I don't think the UFC is going to do that. A lot of legal people aren't going to let him do that, especially the bigger name that he is. He's not some low totem pole guy. So I don't think he's going to be able to get out of his contract, but I could see also Richard Schafer saying, hey, I can make a mega fight for you. We don't need the UFC. I can go make Jon Jones versus Stipe Miocic or Jon Jones versus Brock Lesnar or something somewhere else. We can call it our own thing. We'll promote it. You'll get all the money. Or a boxing bout, maybe something like that even. I could see Richard Schafer doing that. I think it's a wild card. I don't think it's going to happen. I think overall Richard Schafer is just going to help in general, but just something to keep in mind. Now that Richard Schafer is in Jon Jones' corner, but I don't think it'll hurt any. I don't think it'll hurt the situation more than it's already been hurting. So I think it was a good move by Jon Jones to get Richard Schafer into his corner. And then just going through a few fights real quick, and then I'll get into my couple evergreen topics to get you out of here on a Friday. A few fights that have just been made. We now have Michelle Pereira taking on Nico Price. That matchup being made for, I believe it was July, that one coming up. Yair Rodriguez taking on Max Holloway now. I think that's a fantastic fight. It was getting a lot of hate this week. My guy Errol Helwani tweeting out, I believe it was yesterday or the day before, saying he didn't get all the hate for it, and I didn't get the hate either. I actually tweeted out when this fight was made, I said this fight was going to be great or something like that. I can't remember what I tweeted. I tweeted something out. And immediately, I had some people tweeting at me and messaging me like, oh, what do you mean? This is going to be an easy Holloway win. I'm like, hold on, people. I'm not saying Holloway's not going to win easily. What I'm saying is this is a good matchup. I think stylistically, I think it's going to be a lot of fireworks. Yair Rodriguez, he's a fun guy to watch strike. He does some interesting things. I think Holloway will win, obviously. But I think this is a good fight. And Holloway's got to stay active. I mean, is he not going to fight? He's got to get somebody. And Yair Rodriguez, if it hadn't been for all of these injuries and layoffs and everything, I mean, he would have been in fights like this already or close to it. You know what I mean? And he's been facing guys like Jeremy Stevens, those guys. So I think this fight makes a lot of sense. I'm looking forward to it. And then the fight that maybe has been made recently that makes the most sense of all is bare knuckle boxing. They made some news. Paige Van Zandt, she signs on to fight Rachel Ostovich, the former UFC product as well, and Ostovich there on an upcoming bare knuckle boxing card. And that fight makes a ton of sense. That fight should have been made to start. That should have been Paige Van Zandt. And I know Ostovich was recently signed, but that was the type of fight bare knuckle needed for Paige Van Zandt right away. Someone that doesn't have a ton of great striking chops, someone that Paige can definitely, PVZ can definitely compete with and probably beat. I think that's fair to say. I think that should be easy money for Paige Van Zandt in that fight. That should have been what bare knuckle boxing was looking for right away. When you bring someone like Paige Van Zandt on and you give her all that money, she is one of your shining stars now. You have to matchmake early on. I mean, a lot of fight fans won't like this, but in my opinion, you can't just, I don't want to say she was thrown to the wolves. They gave her a somewhat beat and winnable matchup, but you gave her a woman that obviously has some boxing chops, who knows how to put her combinations together, who has maybe even more of a background with using her hands than Paige Van Zandt does. That was not a good starting matchup. That should have been a second or third or fourth matchup down the line for Paige Van Zandt, but bare knuckle boxing getting this one right with the Ostovich signing there. All right, that's all the MMA news for the day. If you have any thoughts, want any other questions to be answered, tweet at me at Jeff_Brantley or go over to Instagram, again, at Jeff_Brantley. All right, two more topics for you today. A couple non-MMA, non-boxing things, and then I'll get out of here. Number one, and this was trending on Twitter, I think it was Thursday or Wednesday, Tuesday, one of those. I think maybe even Tuesday. It was trending on Twitter, and then I started getting into this topic of Steakhouse 48. And if you didn't see it, I believe it was a Steak 48, something like that. I'm probably saying the name wrong, whatever. Steak 48, Steakhouse 48. It might be Steak 48, up in the Northeast somewhere. This restaurant has come out, and they've put out a sign on their door somewhere saying that if you go and you eat there, you have to at least spend $100. And it's not on food. It can be anything. It says food and beverage, right? So you can go on there and you can get some drinks. You can get some steak. You can get whatever, all combined together, or you could go drink yourself silly, whatever it is. You just have to go and spend $100 at the steakhouse. And everybody's all mad about this. Everyone's tweeting about it, making fun of it, saying that you got to dress a certain way if you go there, which they also had a dress code that came out and said this, which people were also making fun of. People were just absolutely up in arms. Most people were, and maybe this is where I'm getting old again. Maybe I'm not in hip with the kids, if you will, whatever you want to say. But I was so baffled by this that I'm like, why are people mad about this rule and all these dress codes from Steak 48? I have no idea why people were so mad. It makes no sense to me. They should do that. They should be doing that. I mean, they're probably losing money because of the pandemic. They need to hire, they have bartenders and waitresses and waiters, all of them, and they pay all of them. They're probably trying to get some money back after the pandemic. I have no problem with this. And plus, I think the biggest reason why I have no issue with this at all, the dress code is what it is. Listen, you don't want to go to you don't like a dress code, then don't go to a place with a dress code. Bottom line, you want to go to Outback Steakhouse, you want to go to the Lone Star Steakhouse or Saltgrass or whatever, and you want to wear a cutoff, t-shirt with a bunch of holes in it, everything, denim shorts. Go do it. Knock yourself out. You won't. They're telling you can't go here. Whatever. Dress code is what it is. But the reason why I absolutely did not understand this is that who the heck is going to a nice upper end steakhouse and not spending $100? What are these people doing? I mean, what are you going to go there and you're going to order a salad? You're going to go order a house salad and a couple drinks and leave? How are you not spending $100 at these steakhouses? I don't understand that. I mean, if you get a nice steak, a nice dinner, a nice entree, most people know this. That's why I think maybe some of these people are saying this have never been to an actual nice steakhouse before, maybe. I don't know. But, people were out there ripping it. And I don't think it makes any sense. If you're not going to a steakhouse, a nicer one, and I'm saying nicer one, but even if you go to a Lone Star Steakhouse or some of these other ones, and by the way, they're not a sponsor of the show, any of these people. If you want to, go to Man in the Cage MMA.show. There's a sponsors tab. I would love to have anybody on here, no matter who you are. But none of these guys are sponsors here. But, at the same time, so they're not sponsors here. Just lose my train of thought. They're not, but, who's not spending $100 there? I don't understand it. Get some nice entrees. That's probably like $20 or $30. Get a couple drinks. It's probably like, if you get a beer, it's probably like $8. You get a wine, it's like $12, $13, something like that dollars. You're like at $100 already. Get an appetizer. I don't understand it. I don't understand people. Who are these people not spending $100 at a steakhouse? This is crazy to me. That's why I wanted to talk about it on the show today. It really caught my eye, Steak 48. I back you, Steak 48. Get every dollar and dime you can from people and get a dress code. Yeah, push all the hippies elsewhere, right? Steak 48. But I didn't understand it at all for those very reasons. And if you disagree with me, again, at Jeff_Brantley, which some of you will, I have no issue with that. I'll discuss it with you like I talked with Amy Kaplan. I'll discuss with you about Steak 48 and why there should be a $100 minimum at these steakhouse. Those are my thoughts on that. Again, go to Twitter, though. Follow me at Jeff_Brantley. All right, last one for you. A little less controversial here. Maybe it will be. Well, if you didn't like the special, it will be. But the Friends reunion is out on HBO Max now, everywhere. I got James Corden as the host. Also very controversial. I have some thoughts on him. But he's hosting it. It's a Friends reunion. It's been, 17 years since the show went off the air. HBO Max puts it together. I told myself at first I wasn't going to watch it. At least right now, I was going to give it a little time. Because personally, while I watched Friends, and I know Friends actually very well, it wasn't one of my favorites, we'll say. I liked it, and I think it had some really good moments. It was kind of funny here and there. But it wasn't one of my favorites. So I was like, all right, maybe I'll wait, and then I'll watch it. And I'm not going to join the hype train, you know what I mean? But I ended up joining the hype train. The 90s sitcom love in me broke down, and I watched it. I watched it with my wife the other day, HBO Max Friends reunion show. And I went into it thinking, I'm going to hate this. I'm going to hate this show. I'm going to hate some of the things these people are saying. It's going to be stupid, and I'm going to go rip it on the podcast. That's what I thought. But I actually watched it, and I kind of liked it. I got to be honest. Maybe you definitely make fun of me for that one. That I kind of liked it. It was all right. Some of the moments you hear and some of the insight that all the actors were talking about, David Schwimmer, all them, Jennifer Aniston, Courtney Cox, Matt LeBlanc, all those guys, everybody on the show, Lisa Kudrow. They all were given some great insight. And I thought it was interesting. I thought it was somewhat entertaining, especially some of the moments behind the camera, showing some of the bloopers. I thought it wasn't bad. But I do think they need to fix this. And this is where, I'm backing Steak 48. If I were to be these networks, though, and they already did like a Fresh Prince reunion. I haven't watched that one, actually. I need to watch that one still. But if these networks are going to do these reunion shows, can you not get us one episode? I heard today that they paid all of them like $2 million, plus they're getting a percentage of all the episodes streamed of the Friends reunion to all of the actors, which is good. Go get your money. But you couldn't put together one more episode for us. You couldn't give us like a 15 minutes of new Friends episode. I like the reunion shows, but give me some new content as well. That's new content, but give me a new episode. Give me some more of that. That's what I want to see. I also want to see the Seinfeld reunion. I don't know if it'll ever happen, but that's what I would love. I'm a Seinfeld guy. Everybody's got their sitcom in the 90s. There's some other ones you can name. But I love Seinfeld way more than Friends. I love Seinfeld. I want to see it. I want to see a reunion show. I guess I could just go watch. A Larry David produced show, and it's pretty much like watching Seinfeld. But I'm more of a Seinfeld guy. That's what I want to see. I want to see a Seinfeld reunion, and I want one more episode of Seinfeld. Don't just give me although it'd be entertaining. I don't want to just see Jerry Seinfeld, Jason Alexander, Julia Louis-Dreyfus. I don't want to see any of them. I don't want to see any of them just talking. I want to see a new episode. Give me that, networks. Give me that. But I like the Friends reunion. It was all right. And as for James Corden, I'll end the show on this. Whatever. I'm like, at first it was really weird. And I have people that listen to the show that are from the UK, that are from Europe. I have nothing against European people. I love European people. But it was just kind of weird having James Corden host the show. It just seemed a little weird. I mean, Jimmy Fallon's out there. I would have liked to seen him. I don't think Jimmy Kimmel could have because he's on a different network. Same thing probably with Fallon. That's probably why they didn't do him. But Fallon would have been a great option. I think they could have even got, maybe it would have been a little weird with Jennifer Aniston, knowing their past, but they could have got even like Brad Pitt, who's been on the show before. Get Brad Pitt to come host it. I mean, give him like $1 million. You're just throwing money around. Give him $1 million to come host it. Maybe James Corden was the cheapest. Maybe that's why they had James Corden hosting it. And I have nothing against James Corden. It was just it was weird having him host it. I did not like the James Corden part of it, but the rest of it I liked. Go check it out, the Friends Reunion. Let me know what you think on Twitter at Jeff_Brantley or on Instagram at Jeff_Brantley. All right, that's going to do it for me today. I know I went over a wide variety of topics. End of the show, maybe a little different than I normally do, but it's a little bit different of a week with no big MMA cards this week, but there is some big boxing, and I will be tweeting about that coming up tomorrow night on Twitter at Jeff_Brantley, live tweeting about all of these fights. Devin Haney, Jorge Linares, the Nonito Donaire Oubaali fight, all of those. I'll be live tweeting about all of those. I'm going to do an Instagram or YouTube live, maybe both coming up tomorrow as well, so be on the lookout for that. Plenty of boxing coverage coming up this weekend right here on the Man in the Cage MMA and Combat Sports podcast, so go check it out. All right, and then coming up Monday, I'm also going to have another boxing guest I'm lining up right now. Again, Jeremy Herriges, thank you. Great guest. Jeremy Herriges, go check him out. Fansided.com, all the other things he does, his YouTube channel. That boxing writer, Jeremy, a great guest. But I have another boxing writer lined up, another boxing, not a writer, but a media guy lined up for Monday, trying to get him, or Tuesday, trying to get him fully locked in here. But I'll have some more of that coming up on Monday as we'll react to all of these fights coming off the weekend. And then we'll turn the page. We'll be back into full MMA slate action as there is UFC Vegas 28 coming up next week. On my birthday, actually. I'm going to turn 30 next week. I'm getting old. On Saturday, June 5th, UFC Vegas 28. But I'll fully turn the page. We'll start talking about that, and then we'll move into the next week as we have another Bellator card coming up eventually as well. And then the PFL machine will keep chugging as well as they get closer to their playoffs. All right, everybody. So make sure you follow me on Twitter at Jeff_Brantley. Same thing on Instagram. Also, go check out our YouTube page, The Man in the Cage MMA and Combat Sports Podcast. Go hit subscribe. Go follow and subscribe as well on Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, the audio versions. Just go check it and just go start hitting the subscribe button and follow button everywhere. Everything. Just go hit the follow button, go hit the subscribe button, and we'll be back right here next week, Monday or Tuesday, on episode 91 to cover everything, react to everything, and turn the page to some more MMA action next week right here on the Man in the Cage MMA and Combat Sports Podcast. All right, enjoy the fights coming up Saturday night, or if you're not into boxing, then enjoy the time off. I'll meet you back here next week for episode 91, but until then, everybody, I'll talk to everybody later.